Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Ask SCW is back once again answering your questions in the wrestling community. If you want to get involved, leave the hashtag AskSCW. You can drop a comment here in the comment section on YouTube, or you can see on the page right now where you can follow and like. Of course, it's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. A whopping 21 questions this week coming on, 21 different answers this week. Thank you so much to everyone getting involved here in the wrestling community. Make sure to follow each other. Go on, let's support each other. We're one big happy family here in the wrestling community. Let's support each other and support wrestling. So without further ado, let's get involved with our first question of the week. And that is coming from the Slop Drop Wrestling podcast, asking, was spending the money on bringing in Tyson and his entourage for an angle worth it for AEW, beating NXT by only 100,000 viewers? It's a great question to kick things off for us this week, and I must say we have to look. Yes, it wasn't the biggest number of beating NXT this week, and you have to look. They've also just come off a pay-per-view as well. But what it is that this is not something that's designed for 1 week. This is something designed to build AEW as a product, as a brand going forward. You look at Mike Tyson; he is mainstream. He's been one of the biggest sporting personalities of all time, you know, one of the greatest boxers in history. And you know, WWE did this 20 years ago, and you could argue that perhaps that's when Tyson's best days were. But WWE 20 years ago were losing to WCW heavily in the ratings war each and every week. It was, I believe, 83 weeks that they lost consecutively to WCW. Now, in amongst this, perhaps about a year into it, WWE actually had Mike Tyson come in and shoot an angle with Steve Austin. Now, that wasn't something they designed on that night to even win the ratings. They actually lost, I believe, the ratings, if I'm not mistaken, on that night. But it's something that helped build that brand and build that product going forward. And, of course, over the months, WWE would then get back in the ratings war and win. And then eventually they would take over, and eventually, as we see today, WWE exists and WCW doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case here with AEW, but certainly they're in their first year. They're in their baby stage as a brand and as a product. And outside the wrestling community, you could question AEW is not that well known. It's certainly not the mainstream company. And looking at it, if they can bring someone in like Mike Tyson and, you know, fans that wouldn't check it out might check it out, they might come in and they'll see other things in this. They may see a rivalry that they might be interested in with a former WWE guy if they like their wrestling with Chris Jericho. They can see other superstars like a Kenny Omega, a Cody, maybe, you know, even an Orange Cassidy could be a comedy character. Someone could attract different eyes to the product and capture these people to watch each and every week. And you might see that, you know, whatever the number is, whether it's 600,000, 700,000, they might get back to eventually 1 million, 1.5 million, and that would be an incredible amount of people to watch AEW and would show a big support and positiveness for the brand. It's putting in money now, but it's seeing what results can come later. Yes, on this particular week, it's only give a small advantage of an NXT, but you look over time to come, and perhaps in the number of months, especially how long they may use Tyson, this could be something that could really help AEW going forward in the long term. Next question coming from Facebook from Richard Horrigan. Tyson versus Jericho, All Out? Well, for me, that makes the most logical sense. Looking at All Out is probably the next big pay-per-view that AEW does. I believe Fight Fest last year was a free event that they did, even though it's a pay-per-view style. It's not something that was for people to purchase. I'm not sure what they're doing for this year, but they've announced when All Out is going to be. We don't know when Fight Fest is going to be. So for me, it feels like that the big direction for a pay-per-view standpoint would be All Out, and that way that would make the most sense. You've got about 3 or so months, just under 4 months, to really build a program as well, if you're going to do it. The key is how you're going to use Mike Tyson to where it's going to work. But I mean, if you look at Chris Jericho's quotes over the dirt sheets over this last few days, and I agree with him with all storylines in wrestling, it's the journey that takes you there. If you remember those times in the Attitude Era, and then you had to sit through watching Mideon and Viscera and superstars like that, but you remember the journey that took you there. You watched each and every week because you were excited about the television, the storylines that you were given. It gripped you into what you were watching. So when the pay-per-view payoff happened, it was the cherry on top of the cake. It wasn't necessarily the be-all and end-all if it was a 5-star match or not. Now, we don't want it to be a train wreck, so it's finding what's the best way and best method to do it. Would it be a straight-up wrestling match? Maybe a street fight? Maybe even a boxing match? I mean, Chris Jericho apparently has got some training in boxing. Probably, obviously, not to the level of Tyson, but, you know, he's got some training in there. So you look and say, well, that could be an angle they could go down. They could even go down the old WWE route, which we mentioned about 20 years ago when they used Tyson before. Tyson could be an enforcer. He could elevate a superstar by actually being in the corner of that superstar that would go on and win and make them perhaps more of a household name, certainly amongst the AEW community, that this person would become a big deal overnight. So they've got lots of potentials and opportunities of what they can actually do here with this. And it could be a lot of fun. We could, as I say, if there's an entourage with Tyson, maybe Tyson has his entourage and it's them versus the inner circle. Who knows? There's lots of different possibilities. But personally, for me, I'm looking forward to enjoying the ride and I hope it happens. I would like to see Tyson versus Jericho in some form at All Out. If you had to put a prediction right now of what I think would be best to do, I think the boxing match would be good because it would protect Chris Jericho if he was to lose, which I think would be the likely outcome from it. So I would say that that would be the best way to go. A boxing match would be quite fun, and we'd like to see someone get knocked out from Tyson as well. I think that would be quite entertaining. So I would go with a boxing match. I think that would be the best route at this stage of the game right now. Next question coming from a DBW podcast. Is WWE using Jeff Hardy's drug abuse in a storyline in poor taste? Poor taste, you could argue, yes. But what I'm going to say is perhaps slightly controversial, but I enjoyed SmackDown. I liked the fact that we had a storyline, an angle. It was kind of blurring the lines of reality and fiction, but sometimes WWE's best work is from that. And we've already mentioned the Attitude Era already in this video today, and the Ruthless Aggression Era as well. Not every storyline was done in good taste back then, but yet for some reason they are seen as the holy grail of wrestling years. Everyone looks back and go, oh, that was, you know, the best times, and those were the times where it was worth watching. Sometimes it's good to go down those ways and give something that's a bit more controversial rather than just no storyline of I don't like you and I don't like you, let's have a match. Well, there's something that's been put in here into a story. Is it tasteful? Arguably not, but what I would turn around and say is that it's quite clear that with this storyline, it's kind of been done as a DUI, but more as an accusation. It was more framed, and it was quite clear that it wasn't Jeff Hardy who done this. So in that way, I feel that it's okay. I think if it was more the fact that Jeff Hardy was actually responsible for this, and it was clear that they were kind of taking, you know, abusing what Jeff Hardy's past has been, yeah, I think I'd have a different look on what I'd think of the angle. But as for me, it feels clear that Sheamus framed Jeff Hardy in this, otherwise Jeff Hardy wouldn't have been back at the end of the episode, wouldn't have been released and passing tests and stuff, and you just feel that for him to come after Sheamus as well shows that maybe Sheamus beat him up after, you know, being the guy to do this to Elias. So that's what I kind of feel is where the storyline direction is, and that's why I kind of feel okay with it. But I felt that a lot of what we saw with SmackDown had a you know, kind of an I don't want to say organic feel, but certainly when we got to the backstage where they were all discussing backstage of how they were going to fix the show with the 2 matches that were put off for the IC title tournament, that kind of flowed quite well. The battle royal flowed quite well. It was almost like a story going throughout the show, and I think we lack a lot of that in WWE. I felt SmackDown went so quickly this week. It felt like almost that we could have had that. If that was on Raw, for example, then the 3-hour show would have flown by. You would have even thought of in one to say like the show was too long each and every week. We need more storylines where they're connecting together in the shows, something to get your eyeballs on the prize. So for me, I actually would turn around and say that I was a fan of this storyline because of the fact that I was entertained and I was watching it, and my eyes were not interested in going somewhere else. I wasn't interested in picking up my phone and looking at Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I was fully invested in what was happening on my television screen. So from that point of view, you could argue, yes, slightly poor taste, but you know what? I was entertained, so I was watching, and I'm interested to know what's going to happen next. I want to see SmackDown next to know what's going on with the storyline. Am I excited for Raw, which was being match after match? I'm not as excited, so I think that says something in itself for me that, yeah, poor taste maybe, but I'm entertained and I was invested, so yeah, I kind of was okay with it. Wednesday night wallop for us now with our next question. Is Jeff Hardy worth one last push? In my opinion, yes. Now, I wouldn't have him pushed to the point where he become WWE Universal Champion. I don't think he's championship material on a brand, but he's certainly someone that could be in the top four, especially with Roman Reigns not being around. We are lacking people in the main event scene on SmackDown, and you've argued now that you could have 6 guys that could fill the role. Now, outside of Braun Strowman, we've got The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. I mean, we've now got AJ Styles moved to the brand. We've got Daniel Bryan, but those two are going for the IC title. So they're concentrating on the mid-card at the moment. So we've got Sheamus and we've got Jeff Hardy. And both of those are in a program at the moment, as we discussed in the last question. It certainly has taken, almost like a focus point from the show, that the whole show was mainly focused around those 2 guys. It makes you feel like that this rivalry is important and is almost like a sub-main event rivalry. And I like that because I think that the stuff you can do here. That going on to the last question, I'm surprised actually that feud wasn't used, or that storyline wasn't used in a taste with actually the Fiend Bray Wyatt, because I think it would go very dark and very twisted, and you could argue that it would be very distasteful, but again, I think that would have a unique twist on the way that it would be done by the Fiend. But looking at it, I think that Jeff Hardy has got some great feuds that could be left in him with the likes of the Fiend, Braun Strowman, we say Sheamus there. I'd like to see him in the ring with AJ Styles. I don't really remember a big program with them two in WWE for definite. Daniel Bryan, I'd love to see that match take place, as we didn't get it this past week. And when Roman comes back, I think that they could do some work together. So yeah, I think Jeff Hardy, there's definitely some room for one last push with him in WWE, but I would have him as maybe the 5th level guy to the championship on the brand. I wouldn't have him as the top tier. I know that I've not mentioned, by the way, with the main event bracket, Otis with the Money in the Bank briefcase, but that's because for me, he is still growing. He's got the briefcase, but at the moment, he needs to grow into that role and then grow into the role as the champion. And I think that certainly with a bit of time, and if he's booked correctly over the next 6 months, he'll definitely be in the conversation as well. And you never know, maybe him and Jeff Hardy could have a great match somewhere down the line. We'll have to wait and see. But there's lots of possibilities with Jeff, and I certainly would be in favour of seeing him involved in certainly near the top end of the SmackDown card. I don't see why not. Next question coming from Dan the Man Williams. Who should Undertaker's last match be? Personally, I hope it's Seth Rollins or an AJ Styles rematch. For me, you've hit the nail on the head immediately there. I think as an in-ring match, and I think that's what the Undertaker wants to finish. I'd love to see a couple more cinematic matches with Taker. I thought that was his best work for years. But it feels like with the Last Ride series we've got on the WWE Network, he wants that big blow-off match. That one match he says, right, okay, and I'm happy here, I can walk away tomorrow. And I think if and when he gets that, I think he'll walk away. I don't think it matters when it is. But the thing is, though, I think he would want it in front of an audience. And I think that is something that is a bit of a shame, because we don't quite know exactly how and when, what's going to work out with fans going forward just yet. I think we've definitely got 2 more matches in Taker. I think Survivor Series is one for the 30-year anniversary for the Taker, and it's actually on the same date, if I'm not mistaken, as well, for his 30-year anniversary. And I think WrestleMania, I think there's one more Mania in the Undertaker. I think that would be an ideal place for him to stop and finish. Those 2 opponents would be the perfect ones for me. I would have Seth Rollins as the first one, and I would have AJ as the final opponent, because, I mean, they had a great Boneyard match. Undertaker seems to be a big fan of AJ Styles, and I think that he would be quite happy to finish his career off with the Phenomenal One out of WrestleMania. The other notable matches that I would like to see, because there's still some room for some Taker matches, and wouldn't be surprised if they were possible. I say wouldn't be surprised. Sting would be a cinematic match, if ever. It's still a dream match. I'm going to say every week until I get it. But I think Roman Reigns is still a potential that could happen. If Reigns was to come back, you watching the documentary, Undertaker felt bad for how that match went down. I wouldn't be surprised if Taker would want to return the favour somewhere. And Drew McIntyre's a top star as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Taker was wanting to get in the ring with him before he was to hang up the boots once and for all. I mean, they have done it in a tag team match as well already, but I know that was at one point the direction for this year's WrestleMania was Taker versus Drew, but of course plans changed as the year went along. So there's lots of different possibilities, but if I had to pick one as the final match, I think AJ Styles would be the one that I would pick. I think that it would be the perfect fit right now for this stage for the Undertaker's career to finish off on such a high note. Next question comes from Derek Stark, the Ego Maniac, is over here on SCW. What's your opinion on AEW and WWE having wrestlers as the audience? What's your opinion on the hockey glass on the barricade to protect the wrestlers? Personally, I'm fine with it. I mean, we look now and say that we've had the pandemic going on now for a number of months, and a lot of people have, with wrestlers and stuff, they've continued to do what they do. and no one has suffered as a result that we know of from it. The pandemic hasn't affected wrestling, so I'm happy to be okay with it going forward. And of course, if you want to have some fans in the building, why not use your wrestlers? I think it makes the most logical sense. And yeah, I mean, AEW, of course, were the first to do it, and now WWE have done it in their own style, having their NXT guys there. And of course, it's a very more intimate. If we look at the two difference of the companies, I mean, AEW are now in Daly's place in Jacksonville, and they've kind of got a bigger space to work with. And obviously, you know, they have superstars that are sort of each side of the ring behind a barricade, and they've always found a good way to integrate them into the show. WWE seems to go more, like we said, with this barricade, the glassing kind of like hockey style fence. NXT superstars actually just treating them as fans rather than actually part of the show as something that could integrate in the storylines. Now, end of Raw, yes, some of them got involved and got destroyed by Lashley and Drew McIntyre, but I don't think that's the overall view of what those NXT stars are there for. So I think that they have different purposes, which is kind of cool, because if it's the same exact thing, it kind of comes a bit copycat. But I'm sort of a fan of it. I like the way that AEW has managed to use those guys to integrate the shows to enhance their storylines. WWE, I like the fact that they've managed to make it like almost just like fans are there. I would like to see people that are just pure performance center guys, not people I recognise really from the NXT roster, because they're not integrating in the show as they're just fans. Like Shotzi Blackheart, for example. I mean, with the green hair, she sticks out like a mile, and she's actually been growing on NXT. So I would prefer that she wasn't there. I'd prefer she just stuck to NXT, being in ring there, and we had more performance center guys that we're not really quite aware of at this stage, because then it comes across more organic as well, with them supposedly being fans cheering on the faces and booing the heels. And I suppose that also has that different twist with AEW. The good guys cheer the good, the bad cheer the bad, where with WWE it feels like it's more that planted, you will cheer what you want us to cheer for kind of thing, and boo what you want us to boo kind of vibe. So they're a bit different in their own way, but no, I'm kind of cool with it. I think it's been, it's a breath of fresh air, because the empty arena stuff, it worked for that short term. It was very weird to watch, but I'm sort of okay with it for a time. But it is nice to have a bit of reaction. It adds a bit more life. The fans have been heavily missed, in my opinion, and I can't wait for when we can get back to some normality and get back to having these 5,000-10,000 seater arenas where we can have all these fans filling up. And I think especially when we do, I think it's going to be crazy. I think the fans are going to go mental for these first few shows that we get when we go back to normal. But in the meantime, what they're doing right now, I think it's cool. I think it's fine, and I think it's something that breaks it up, because it was a bit too quiet when it was just no one there at all. It gives a bit more life to the shows of what we're watching. Joseph Ashcraft with our next question. Is there any shot Kurt Angle is heading to AEW? Well, according to the dirt sheets, it's looking very likely that Kurt Angle will be back with WWE once they go back. I mean, he was furloughed, wasn't he, back in April? I believe he'd be free to do what he wants from July, but he's been used on NXT this week, used on SmackDown. Now, a few guys are being continually used, even though the contracts are running down and out, but it's heavily believed Kurt Angle will be re-signing with the company. So I don't expect him to go anywhere else, but of course, it would be a massive coup for anyone if it was AEW or Impact Wrestling. And, as he's been furloughed, I'm sure these guys all talk. I mean, it probably wouldn't be the worst thing to say, well, look, your contract's come, you've been furloughed, you don't have to re-sign with WWE. Do you fancy coming here? It would not be the worst move in the world, because Kurt Angle could offer a lot in some sort of role and capacity, but I believe he will be continuing with WWE. Next question comes from a WWE Fan Report. Would you like to see Kurt Angle manage Matt Riddle? It's a great question, that one. I do think they would have actually some good chemistry in some ways on the TV, because of the fact that Matt Riddle's kind of got that comedy-esque character. Kurt Angle knows how to play with comedy characters very well. They could have a unique dynamic as a duo, so we could actually make some fun television. But I would say that with Kurt Angle's background and Matt Riddle with his lifestyle and his kind of gimmick choice, I'm not sure that something Kurt Angle would go down the route of being a manager, but certainly would add credibility to Matt Riddle instantly within WWE and SmackDown. What talk about a way of making someone an instant potential star, having one of your greatest of all time actually as the manager, and someone to say, look, this is going to be the guy. I think we need to see more of that in WWE, that they could use their legends to almost the same as what AEW do with their legends, to use to try and elevate someone of tomorrow, because that is one way that you can build a new star, and certainly could do that quickly if Kurt Angle was to be the manager of Matt Riddle. So in one way, I think it's a great idea, but it's not something that I could see, unfortunately, happening. But I definitely would love to see Kurt Angle in that sort of role if he was to re-sign with the company. I think that would definitely be a clever way to use him. Would Matt Riddle be the guy, or is Matt Riddle going to be the guy? It's something that I have my reservations with. I do think that Matt Riddle is going to have an instant impact, but I do worry for him somewhere down the line, 6-12 months, if he will just be relegated to some sort of comedy character on TV. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a world champion, but we'll have to wait and see, and I'm willing to be proven wrong. Time will tell. But as a duo, I think you could definitely have some fun moments with it. Matt Riddle had some great moments with Pete Dunne. I think Kurt Angle would play his role very well. So it would be something I would be fairly interested in seeing, but it's not something I'm convinced will happen. My good friend Mervin, Mr. 1925 on Instagram with us next now. He says, last week was the anniversary of my all-time favourite wrestler, the Macho Man Randy Savage. What is your favourite Macho moment and why? Well, there are a number, but I'm sure a lot of people, I'll go through a few of them before I go through my favourite. A lot of people, of course, would go with the WrestleMania 3 match with Ricky Steamboat, of course, an all-time classic. It's the match a lot of superstars want to actually make themselves to be when they make a wrestling match, because that stood out and was, the match on arguably the biggest show in the golden era. So I think that's definitely got to be a highlight. The Mega Power storyline, of course, was a big one as well, with him and Hogan winning actually the championship at WrestleMania 4, and I did love his angle with Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7, of course, leading to Miss Elizabeth coming back, and we got the wedding of the century, didn't we, with Savage and Elizabeth at SummerSlam 91. But my first event watching was at WrestleMania 8, and this is going to be my answer for you now, because it was the first time I got to watch Macho Randy Savage, and he was taking on Ric Flair. He became the WWE Champion on that event, and for me that was the moment for me, because that was my first show. It's a nostalgic feeling for me. Savage was the guy winning the match, and I remember as a 6-year-old, I was just really, I was really happy watching it, and it was one of those things that I knew watching that match that I was going to keep watching. So for that one, that's a personal one for me that I would go with as my personal favourite. So Savage winning the championship from Ric Flair at WrestleMania 8 will be my answer for you. But I'd like to know yours in the comments below, and wrestling community, get involved. What is your favourite Macho Man Randy Savage moment? Let me know in the comments section. We're going for Impact Wrestling next now. Tire World Order here for us now. Holy, you know what? I think this week's question has to be about the arrival of Deonna Purrazo. I literally popped right out of my chair and scared my kids. What did you think? Were you surprised? Who's first for her? Talk about a statement of intent. Apparently, reading on the dirt sheets this week, NXT contracts don't have 3 months of their clause of where they can't compete. Apparently, it's only 30 days. So, Deonna Purrazo available. I was sure that ROH and AEW would have been in for her, but fantastic. Impact Wrestling have managed to get a massive coup, in my opinion. The Virtuosa, she's got a lot to offer, and I was the same as you. I was shocked when I saw that come up, and pleasantly surprised. I think that she has a lot she can offer to Impact Wrestling. The women's division in Impact is absolutely stacked. I would arguably say it's got to be up there with the best women's division in wrestling. There's so many levels of what that division offers. You've got, Tessa Blanchard right now, who's actually the main champion of the company. You've got like the longest reigning champion that's been in Impact Wrestling with Taya Valkyrie. You've got Jordan Grace as the current Knockouts champion, and we've got people that we can build for the future there. There's so many different people in and around the area where we've got the household, or Impact's household names are Su Yung and Havoc. We're building for the future with Kiera Hogan, and we've got new people in like Kimberly and Tasha Steelz, and now the virtuosa Deonna Purrazo. And Tennille Dashwood's another name to throw in there as well. So there's so many women in that division. I'm sure I've missed a few as well, with even people like Madison Rayne might want to come back for a match as well. Literally the possibilities are endless of where we could start with Deonna Purrazo. I think it's going to be whether she wants to be a face or a heel. But if I had to put my money on a starting point for her, just to get the ball rolling, I think that we have a lot of heels, so I think I could see her coming in as a babyface at this particular moment. So I'm actually going to say that she is going to be a tag team surprise partner to help Kylie Ray out with her problem at the moment with Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan. I think this would be a nice starting point just to get Deonna Purrazo's foot in the door, and then we can start moving on to different programs in amongst within Impact Wrestling. So that's if she was to come as a face, and I think that's the way I would bring her in just to begin with. But I think that Deonna Purrazzo, I think she's a future Knockouts champion in the making. I think there's a lot of exciting programs that we mentioned with the other women that she can face. So yeah, I mean, particularly you look at the top three that are arguably in that division with the likes of Tessa Blanchard, Taya Valkyrie, Jordan Grace. I mean, they're three matches that I can't wait to see. But you need to build towards them. I don't think we should get them immediately. I think that where I've said, I think would be a nice starting block, and then we can build Deonna, the Virtuosa, perhaps by Bound for Glory, maybe even the start of next year, she can become a main player in that women's division. Next question comes from BMWP Cap Chuckles. What do you think of the NXT Pit Fight Cage? And what's your favourite metal structure in wrestling? I really enjoyed the Pit Cage, the Pit Fight Cage. I thought it was really good. It was unique. It was different. It reminded me of the Lion's Den match from the late 90s with Ken Shamrock. But I believe he was against Owen Hart at SummerSlam '98. Really reminded me of that. And I'd like to see the Lion's Den match come back actually at some stage. But I think in the meantime, while we have no fans or Performance Center fans, I think this works. But they did well. The ring ropes were not there. It was just something different. And we don't get a lot of different gimmick matches these days within WWE. You could say their most creative has had to be this year, where they haven't got the fans, where they've had to do stuff that's different. But looking at this, I think that this is a keeper. I think this one works. With the clear, tap out or knockout stipulation as well. I think that this is something that works, and I'd like to see it continue going forward. So yeah, I was a big fan of it. As for favourite metal structure, it's a tie for me on this for you today. I really like the Elimination Chamber match. I just loved its unpredictability and the idea that usually more than not we get really good, decent matches out of it. There's always that sense of something freshness when we get the Elimination Chamber. Hell in a Cell for me is there as well, and I feel that I must make Hell in a Cell kind of my choice as well, because of the fact that two of my three favourite matches of all time are Hell in a Cell matches. Of course, Undertaker Mankind from King of the Ring '98. I mean, just watching that just as a time and moment, and being around with the Attitude Era, that was just jaw hit the floor, and it's just as a spectacle. Yeah, it's not a 5-star technical wrestling match, but it's certainly something that Mick Foley gave himself to wrestling that day, and it will always be appreciated for what was done. And the Undertaker, I mean, injured doing that match as well. Those two gave themselves for that match at the King of the Ring, for the company and for wrestling. So that's always going to be a heavy favourite for mine. And the other one is the End of the Era match, arguably probably the last greatest Hell in a Cell match, just purely from a storyline basis. That was absolutely incredible with Undertaker, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. You could argue that was even End of an Era with Hell in a Cell, because there's not been as many standout Hell in a Cell matches since. But for me, those would be my favourite metal structure matches for you. Headlock Talk podcast for our next question. Where does Timothy Thatcher go forward from here? Great question, this one, because the possibilities are endless. He's now a heel, but with the belief now, this is something I read, that apparently athletes are going to be welcome. Sports athletes are going to be welcome into the United States to continue on now, so that sports can push forward in the near future. So this makes me believe that with wrestling being so essential, that we're going to be able to get the likes of Pete Dunne back, amongst the NXT ranks, perhaps Walter as well. But Pete Dunne is a natural rivalry, because the Broserweights was going on, and Pete Dunne had selected Timothy Thatcher as the handpicked tag team partner. It lost him the tag team titles. It broke up Riddle as well. Riddle's now on SmackDown, so Pete Dunne is without Riddle, and it's a natural progressive feud. So I think that's the one that I would go with, but we'll have to wait and see if Dunn can come back on TV or not. But Timothy Thatcher, I think, would be a great match for them two together. I think that certainly there'll be a lot of interest in that. If that wasn't to happen, I would go for the North American Championship. I've said for the longest time, I think Keith Lee needs to go towards the main event. Someone needs to take that belt from him. I'm not quite sure who it's going to be, but if it's not Johnny Gargano, maybe that could be the program afterwards. And because why, if you're not there for a championship, why are you there? So Timothy Thatcher, if you can't have a match with Pete Dunne, I think Keith Lee would be a great shout as an alternative. Next question is from Get Show Wrestling Podcast. What two wrestlers in any promotion would be fitting for another pit match like they did on NXT? A great question, this one. Well, of course, the idea of it being obviously a submission style match or a tap out style match. And I mentioned earlier that I think that it reminded me of the Lion's Den. So Ken Shamrock would be someone to be very fitting for this role. If you wanted to go with that sort of UFC kind of style, I mean, you could have a Brock Lesnar or a Lashley could be. I mean, even on the main product, that would be an interesting one to see with two bigger guys. With two smaller guys, I mean, I would love to see Zack Sabre Jr. in that environment. I think he would be a great shout. He's such a great technical wrestler, submission wrestler, and I think with the likes of like Daniel Bryan, I think they would be really good in that sort of environment together, of that sort of size. So that would be another one I would give out for you there. But there's a lot of different variables of what you could do. Yeah, it depends on what you're looking. But there's lots of great submission style wrestlers out there. But so I would say as an outside the box, I mean, I'd love to see Zack Sabre Jr. Period in WWE, but in that sort of style of environment, I think he would flourish. But if we're going for more that sort of MMA style fighter, kind of like Lion's Den style, then I think Lashley and Lesnar would offer something in that. I think that would definitely be interesting. I've always wanted to see them two in action, so it's a match I want to see. I wonder if it's something that fans would want to see. My good friend James Steele with us next now with our next question. It looks like the seeds are being sown for the potential implosion of the Undisputed Era somewhere down the line. If you was booking this, how would you play it? Replace Adam Cole with a new leader, end the stable altogether, or something else? Well, when you look at the Undisputed Era, I'm going to say from the very start that these guys should never split. They are perfect together, and this stable, when it's done with NXT, needs to move to Raw. I would say SmackDown, but I think they would actually do better on Raw with the way that the current rosters are laid out and with sizes and stuff like that. I think Adam Cole could quickly go into the main event on Raw as well as he has been on NXT. But looking at it, I think a key component here is that rumours are suggesting that Adam Cole's contract is coming up, and it's not sure if he's re-signed yet or not. Now, he's NXT Champion. He's been champion for a year. It does suggest what is going to happen because you need to get the belt off of Adam Cole if he's not going to stick around. But it also could play into a point of breaking up the Undisputed Era if they were to go down that route. I think that if I was booking it, and if you were going to get rid of Adam Cole, I think that the best route to do would be for Adam Cole to start getting a bit too cocky in his role, almost giving his other members of his stable a hard time. The fact that they are no longer champions. The prophecy was for them to have all the gold. Adam Cole is still that guy that is the NXT champion, but the others have lost their gold and can't win it back. And is it for him to do everything all by himself? Is he the guy that's got to go off the North American title, the tag team titles all by himself? And you can have that sort of cocky kind of feel from Cole, and it can be to the stage that maybe eventually Roddy Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, they've had enough. They could get someone to replace Cole as someone at the top, or they could just simply, cost Cole the championship and he could be on his way out. For me, I want Adam Cole to remain with WWE, and if he is to remain with WWE, I say I wouldn't split the stable, but if he was to have one to be kicked out of the stable and for them to go their ways going forward, or someone to be benefiting as a major babyface from this, I think Kyle O'Reilly is the guy that I would go with because of the fact that he's actually a really good promo. I think he's likeable, and I think he could play a babyface role very well. He did it in ROH. Him and Cole have had some history in ROH as well as a tag team and as rivals, and I think it would work out pretty well on NXT TV as well. But I think they work together best as a unit. I would never break them up, but if they were to break up, I think that's how I would do it. Next question is coming from Mike, Italian Habs Mike. Do you see Velveteen Dream winning the NXT title at TakeOver in your house? If not, do you see Keith Lee being next in line to challenge for the NXT title? Great questions for you there. And just to say, my NXT In Your House predictions will be coming this week on the channel in full. So I'll be giving you every single match, so make sure to go and check those out. But is Velveteen Dream going to win the championship? It's a tricky one. As we said in the last question, is Adam Cole leaving WWE? His contract apparently is coming up, and we don't know if he's going to re-sign. Britt Baker is in AEW. Would he be tempted to go over there? His former, buddies from Ring of Honor and the Bullet Club are over in AEW. Will Adam Cole stay? If he's not going to stay, then he's going to drop that belt very quickly, which makes me think the Velveteen Dream maybe is someone that would win the belt. I mean, it's someone that a lot of people for a long time have wanted to win the NXT title. But there has been some allegations recently going against Velveteen Dream, and for that reason, I'm not sure what the situation is if WWE would give him the belt or not. What I would say is that it's very interesting is the role of Dexter Lumis, who has actually been involved of helping the Velveteen Dream recently in some matches as well. And I think we've got a cinematic style match coming with those two as well, which would imply we could get more than just your regular one-on-one match. We could get the likes of Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly come in and defend, and maybe Lumis might come and help. So it's kind of that kind of feel that we've had recently with NXT TV. The interesting thing I feel is that maybe Dexter Lumis would play better as a heel. And I have a sneaky feeling that he could be a guy that could cost Velveteen Dream and let them two have a program going forward on NXT TV. It's just a feeling I've got at this particular moment. We'll see if it still feels the same when it comes around to predictions time later this week. But would Keith Lee be the guy? I've always said Keith Lee should be the guy. He needs to drop that North American Championship. If he's not been moved to SmackDown and he's not going to become, a challenger for the Universal Championship, then this guy needs to become NXT Champion. Strike it while the iron is hot. Everyone is in favour of Keith Lee. He's had the momentum with him now for a good 12 months now, particularly that skyrocketed, I think, since his programs with Dijakovic, and as well, particularly his Survivor Series and Royal Rumble appearances have done nothing but help that. So I think it's time that we get the belt on Keith Lee. So for me, at this particular moment, whoever walks out champion, Keith Lee needs to become the champion in the near future. Prince White is here with our next question for us now. When will the Bullet Club come to WWE with Finn as the leader, AJ the second boss, and Adam Cole the third boss? Adam Cole's popular this week, isn't he? It's a very interesting question, this one, because you kind of feel that with the Bullet Club, it's never going to be the Bullet Club because obviously that is a property of New Japan, so we're never going to quite get the Bullet Club. We got the club, and then we got the OC with AJ Styles then. I think that was probably the closest we were ever going to get. A lot of fans always wanted Finn Balor to be part of that stable with them, and we never quite got it at the time. There is always a way that we could get the club with these three guys somewhere down the line. We spoke actually in a couple of questions ago about if Adam Cole was kicked out of the Undisputed Era. Why not? Why not he move to Raw and we keep the others then on NXT as the Undisputed Era? Adam Cole could come to Raw. Finn Balor could move, or now to SmackDown, I should say, at this point, because AJ Styles is on SmackDown. Maybe move the SmackDown and you could have a new form of the club. It's something that could happen, or something that would be, maybe a lot of people would be in favour of. But if I was being brutally honest, it's not something that I can see happening, just purely because of the fact that the Bullet Club itself, as we say, has its rights with New Japan Pro Wrestling. All the guys seem to be doing their own thing within WWE right now. Finn Balor was only moved back to NXT in a short time ago. Maybe there's somewhere down the line that AJ Styles moves to NXT, but until all these guys are on the same brand, it's not something that I can see ever happening, unfortunately. And as I've said in a couple of questions ago, Adam Cole, I think he's at home in the Undisputed Era, and I personally wouldn't have that stable ever break up. I think that it's a perfect match, and Bullet Club, when these guys have done their stuff previously in the Bullet Club, it was great at that time, but they've gone on to new things in WWE, and personally for me, I quite enjoy the roles that they're currently in. George Jones with our next question now on Facebook. How would you now reveal the hacker, and who would it be? And he also asks, could you see NWA Powerr overtaking Impact Wrestling and becoming the number 4 promotion? Well, let's start off with a hacker, shall we? A stop-start storyline, in fact, even more stop-start than a Bayley-Sasha Banks rivalry, eh? But looking at this, the hacker storyline, it really seems to have been something that was a lot of momentum and seems to be now cooling off on television. We seem to be getting more videos on Twitter and Instagram these days than we do seeing on our TV every week. We got something on Money in the Bank, which was then almost replayed for us on the following SmackDown, but nothing since. With this storyline, it feels to me that this was something that we had before the pandemic started. We were going into a direction, and we've kind of got to a point now where, in my opinion, I feel WWE kind of wishes that they had this reveal for fans. I think that this is the big issue with this storyline, and I think that they're trying to delay it as best as they can. There's always this talk that we could get fans back soon, whether it's back in a small capacity or at a larger scale, it is unknown at this point, but I think WWE want to sort of delay that for as long as possible. But the problem is trying to keep the momentum of that storyline going. If they have a new video on Twitter, it's only normally 30 to 50 seconds long. They need to find a way of putting it on television, even if it's not something that integrating with superstars. But let's be fair, this storyline works better when it is integrating and messing with superstars' lives. We've seen the way it worked with the tag team division, what it seemed to be the focal point at the start. We've seen as well where it was linked in with what broke up Mandy and Sonya Deville, and we have to wait and see how that's going to be going forward with this storyline with other tag teams. We've seen dissension now with Miz and Morrison. We've seen dissension in other realms as well within WWE. We've even seen something where it could go into the singles division. We want to see what's happened with this storyline, which we mentioned earlier in the video with Jeff Hardy. Well, could the Hacker be involved with that? I mean, where and how do we bring it in? Rumours were suggesting for a long time that Ali was the guy. We've had Gable as someone there. Xavier Woods has been another one that's been teased. Then we've had loads of different other names being thrown into the hat. I think even Maurice was thrown in recently, which for me is a very bonkers idea to go down that route. CM Punk loves teasing and trolling the idea that he could be the Hacker. For me, he's clearly not, just purely because I think CM Punk would want to come back for fans, but I just think that it would be a change of what the role was to begin with. I don't think that this is what the direction was when they were starting with this, and although CM Punk would really fit with the truth would be heard, I just don't think that is the direction of what they're going. I think the perfect place to have done it, if it was Ali, was Money in the Bank, because he could have got his revenge, almost similar to a Brock Lesnar like the year before, come in and Hacker reveals himself and somehow integrates into this match and gets himself the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think that would have been a way to have done it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not so sure what is the best route going forward with the Hacker, purely because, if I'm being brutally honest, I've lost interest with the storyline. I think that the fact that it's been so stop-start, that it's kind of led to a point of where I don't know whether I should be fully invested or not in it. WWE's not given me the reason to care, because I feel in myself, if it's not being featured prominently on TV, then it's something that's maybe not going to have as big a payoff as I want it to. Is it a storyline that's taken some momentum with fans? Yes, definitely. Is it something that could be something that's really big and play out really well? Definitely. The question for me is how are they going to play out? But I think it needs to be, if they want to do it now, they need to do it soon. But it depends if we can get it with fans or not. I personally would like to see, if they're going to do this with the tag teams, I want to see them cause more friction and cause more, reason for people to break up. I think a good one to do would be Miz and Morrison. I think another would be Bayley and Sasha on the road to SummerSlam, if they are going to continue that, because there's rumours that that's going to have another stop-start in this rivalry, which is meant to have been going on now for nearly 2 years, and which we've not got a match, by the way. And it's an interesting thing if there's dissension with Anywhere on Raw. I mean, it would have been interesting if they could have done that with Zelina Vega's stable. They could have had a way to integrate it into the Raw side as well. So there's lots of different ways they could do it, but they need to have where there's a genuine target, someone that they need to reveal themselves to. Maybe it's someone, if it's Ali, for example, if it's someone else, someone of perhaps a bigger name, you could argue, who took this guy out? Who took this guy to make this what it is to begin with? And I think that needs to be where the argument is made. Ali was injured, I believe, and was taken out of storytelling. Chad Gable as well had that sort of going on at the same time, but he's now returned as Shorty G. So I don't know if a wall has been put over our eyes, or if he's just someone that's been ruled out. But it's certainly food for thought. I would say that the best way to do it would be as soon as possible, but I understand if they want to do it in front of fans, and you will get that big reaction. But yeah, for a good name at this point, I don't really know who to tell you. I still believe it's Ali, because I think that's the direction, and Ali hasn't come back in a different role, and we've still seen the circle go around with the hand. I still believe that is there in some way. I think a clever twist is Xavier Woods, just purely because with the up down stuff, that I think that it would be something that could work. Would be an interesting gimmick as well, because not just to break other tag teams up, why not break the New Day up? I think that would be interesting as well. And as well, then you have a target in mind. Maybe Xavier Woods has a new tag team partner. Him and Tyler Breeze have wanted to be a tag team for a long, long time. Why not that be some sort of involvement? In fact, the more I say that, the more I really like that. So even though I don't think that's going to happen, that's what I want to happen. And then they can challenge the New Day for the tag team titles. It's not exactly the biggest playoff, but for me, I think that would be probably a fun way to go down on that route. As for the NWA, I must admit that when we were watching it as it was going through, normally I was actually prioritising other things, so apologies to NWA fans. I wasn't following it as and when like everybody else, but I must admit during the pandemic I've had more time for myself and I have watched everything from when it started up until present. I must admit I thoroughly enjoyed NWA. I think it's a great product. Do I think it's got the ability to become more than Impact Wrestling? In the short term, no, purely because of the fact that Impact is on Access TV, which is a great place to be involved with in the USA. If I'm not mistaken, please tell me if I'm not. But New Japan was involved on Access TV as well at one stage. So I mean, they're seen as perhaps arguably a bigger company than Impact is right now. NWA is kind of like that studio audience. Is currently on YouTube as well. They need to get themselves a major television deal before they can get themselves in that conversation. But they definitely offer an alternative. And I think that's the key, is rather than saying is it a number of the brand, but certainly it's good to see that we have a different alternative to what's going out there and what's around. I think the more people that get the chance to see this platform and to watch NWA will be invested and will get involved to it. And I think that NWA is going to grow. Is it something that in time could become bigger than other companies that are around, the supposedly smaller independent companies as we see today? Potentially, but I think time will tell on it. It's definitely something that I'm prepared to enjoy the ride. And when we mention Impact Wrestling, NWA, I mean, there's ROH in there as well, and they all do a lot of great stuff, and I really enjoy all what they put on the table. So what I would say with NWA Powerr, they bring something that's very different, very unique, and I think that has a potential to be a standout. And we'll have to wait and see in time if that will be rewarded with more viewership. But certainly they've got a fan out of me, and I hope they've got a fan out of you and everyone that's watching this video. And if you haven't checked out Powerr, make sure to go and check out. It's all on YouTube. It's there for you to watch from episode 1 all the way to present. So yeah, go and check out NWA Powerr. It's really good. Our good friend, the Straight Edge Josh, with our next question here on Ask SCW. WWE have banned the buckle bomb after the recent Kairi Sane moment. Do you think WWE will ban more moves down the line? Why can't they just ban Nia Jax? But no, seriously, I mean, the buckle bomb is something that has caused a few injuries. I mean, we mentioned the Kairi Sane one there, which thankfully wasn't so bad, but the buckle bomb from Seth Rollins when he did that to Sting ended Sting's career. And also, if you remember the first Universal Championship match with Finn Balor, actually caused Finn Balor to be out for a number of months when he had the injury there. So there is actually a cause of understanding why the buckle bomb has actually been taken off the move list from WWE. There probably is an argument of why it wasn't taken off sooner, to be brutally honest, with what happened to Sting alone. It's not really the moves themselves, but it's more the way that they are actually executed. I think that's the key here. If you get an injury or something that causes an injury, I think WWE are more inclined to put it towards the banned list. I do feel that we see some moves that in the style of pile drivers, and WWE do not like a pile driver. Perhaps something like the Canadian Destroyer or Panama Sunrise, depending on which company you like to watch. I think that is a move in future that could be banned if it's not executed well. That probably only needs to go wrong once, and that would be really devastating for a superstar. So if you were to say to me if a move could be banned in future, I think that could be one of them. But I think, as I say, it always comes down to execution on how moves are portrayed, not necessarily what they are. But yeah, WWE wants to protect their wrestlers, and I've got nothing against that. Health and safety should always come first. Noob and Co. with our next questions for us now. Is Charlotte Flair ruining the women's division in WWE? We've got, will WWE revisit the feud between Auska and Charlotte Flair in their rematch at WrestleMania 37? And what do I think of WWE bringing back casual fans? First of all, Charlotte Flair ruining the women's division. Not for me. I think that Charlotte Flair is the go-to. She's the standard bearer of women's wrestling in WWE over the last few years. I'm a fan of her, and yes, there is probably the argument that she's been shoved down our throats each and every time she has a title reign, but I think it's a given that WWE want her to match the 16 title reigns that Ric Flair has had in his career. I think it's a storyline moment they're looking for. If I'm not mistaken, with the NXT women's titles, she's now on 14, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were to try and even make that the 16th attempt by WrestleMania this year. But we'll have to wait and see what will happen when it comes around to that. The argument where she could be ruining the women's division would be NXT. Now, bear with me here. If she goes through the entire locker room of women's division NXT, then the future is not looking so bright. You need to make a star out of there, and one of them needs to beat Charlotte Flair to make them that star, and then they need to use that, to propel the other women in that division to really make that mean so much more, to build maybe 3 or 4 stars for the future for when they come to Raw and SmackDown. But looking at Charlotte Flair herself, yes, you could argue and say she's been top of the mountain numerous times, but when she's lost the belts as many times as she's won them. So in that way as well, I'm not so much against it. I mean, she wasn't the top woman in the division. Becky Lynch had that role for at least the last 12 to 18 months. So Charlotte Flair was always playing second fiddle there, and usually on the same brand as well. So I wouldn't say she was ruining the women's division, no. But I would say that she's been forced down our throats with the way the booking has gone. But she's one of the best. So I think that is an argument of why it's been done as well. But I really like your idea for question 2 for a WrestleMania rematch. From WrestleMania 34, of course, they had that where Charlotte took Asuka's undefeated streak. In fact, Charlotte tends to get the better of Auska. It's almost different to what we got in NXT, where no one could beat Auska. Auska had everybody's number, but Asuka's found someone now that's got her number. And I think that would play into a really good storyline for WrestleMania 37, especially if they continue with pushing Auska the way they're pushing her now on the main roster, because these two could become the top women of that Raw women's division. It feels that Nia Jax will be the first one to fall. I'm not convinced that Vince is convinced of Shayna Baszler, which for me seems a bit strange at this point. I think that Shayna has a bright future in WWE, but I think Asuka and Charlotte Flair, that has got something in it for a WrestleMania match, and I think that is something that would be really good. They're definitely having standout years, and I think they've probably been the top 2 women of the women's division so far in 2020 amongst the whole of WWE. So for me, that's the biggest match you could probably make for WrestleMania 37 right now. As for bringing back casual fans, it all comes down to the pandemic. If the rules start to loosen and the numbers start going down, then yeah, bringing them back in dribs and drabs is probably the best way to do it. Making sure social distancing is kept for the time being, but I still think we're a while away from getting full arenas, and we're really far away from having stadiums at this particular stage, if you would ask my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see. Things change very quickly on this, and we see a lot of things now are starting to loosen depending where you are in the world. I've been keeping an eye out, obviously, on for football or soccer, depending on where you are in the world, and the English Premier League is looking to be making a return during the middle of June, which I thought was going to be difficult to bring back in the near future, but they're looking to do so. The German Bundesliga is already back, so there are lots of sports that are looking to get themselves back up and running, and we'll have to wait and see if they all get back up and running. And with team sports particularly, if that can happen, then it shows that people are mixing a bit more with if hopefully with positive results, then we might start seeing fans coming back into the picture a bit more. But it's still a while off for me, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, time will tell on that one. It all comes down to the pandemic. Pro Wrestling Talk with our next question. Do you think Brian Cage will be the AEW World Champion? At some stage, for definite, yes. I think there's no question on that. And I actually was thinking about this the other day with the match he's got at Fyter Fest. It's not going to look good. We spoke about last week how soon is too soon to become a world champion. But if Brian Cage can come in and actually destroy everyone en route to becoming champion and actually defeat Jon Moxley, we could build someone overnight here, and maybe it could work. Maybe there's something that could be good. I mean, we look at WCW in the mid-90s. The Giant came in and was world champion first match, arguably. Yes, he was stripped of the belt, and it took him a few months to get where he was back at the top of the mountain again. But, there's something we could do here. AEW needs more clear main eventers. I think that the division, they're still looking to see who can, grab the brass ring or grab the casino chip, if you will. And Brian Cage is someone that's done that, and we'll have to wait and see what he brings to the table. But from watching Brian Cage on his previous work in Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling, the guy has got a lot to offer, and I think he's got the look. He's definitely got the in-ring smooth set. I think this guy could be a big deal. And with Taz by his side as well, I think that the Machine could become the man in AEW. He certainly will become a world champion one day. The question is Fyter Fest too soon? Next question coming from a good friend's The Hard Hitting Wrestling Show. Do you like AEW establishing a TV championship belt? Compare it with the WCW TV belt. Scale of 1 to 10 being the best, how would you rate it? Well, obviously, yeah, the mid-card championship needs to come in with AEW, something that I think that they were missing from their company. Looking at the championship belt itself, I must admit that on first glance I wasn't a big fan. I know that they were trying to replicate a classic championship from obviously the past of NWA and stuff, from the days of when Arn Anderson had it in the 80s and early 90s. But I'm more of a fan of AEW's forward-thinking ideas, so I kind of felt that with the TNT Championship, it kind of felt like, well, this is a good match with these having this championship belt together. But I felt that the design could have been something that was a bit more forward-thinking rather than something retro. Saying that, the belt can always grow, and a bit of time has passed. It's now been a week. I'm slightly more accepting of the belt. I think my biggest critique of the belt is it being red. I don't think red championships seem to go down well. People were not a fan of the Universal Championship. A lot of people seem to dig out the Raw Tag Team Championships as well. So I think that perhaps red is perhaps the wrong colour, and maybe if this was a different colour belt, then maybe people would perhaps feel a bit differently about it. But certainly, maybe it can become a grower. But I think we needed a mid-card championship. I think the TV title is something that's always been something that's been prestigious, and I think that it's something that AEW can do tastefully and can make it a big deal. And I mean, of course, they're not got hundreds of championships like WWE, so this belt I think will remain prestigious, and I think it's something that is a belt that can elevate the superstar to the next level, because I think that's what those belts were originally designed and intended for. In WWE now, it kind of means that you're kind of the opening act on a pay-per-view at best, maybe a kickoff a lot of the time, but with this here, I think that this is something that can actually make you become a star. So yeah, hopefully we can see big things coming away with the TNT Championship as it moves in throughout with Cody on 2020 and beyond. Cherry Jerry with our next question now. Are cinematic wrestling matches like the Boneyard match and the Stadium Stampede match considered as matches or segments, and why? Great question. I think it stems from your question. They both say match, and if they say match, it's a match, especially if there's also a pinfall of a 1-2-3. I think when you look at the Stadium Stampede, it was more clear it was a match. When you've got the more cinematic stuff, I mean, yeah, they have all kind of been matches. You look at Gargano Ciampa, that was a match. The Firefly Funhouse was kind of more of a movie more than a match, but we still got the free count at the end. I mean, that was probably the closest what we got more as an angle more than a match. But overall, if you've got a referee or you've got someone pinning the 1-2-3 at the end, or there's some sort of way to finish the matches like a Buried Alive style match, they're matches. So yeah, I'm going to go with matches rather than segments. But there are times where the lines are blurred in amongst this with the cinematic matches, but maybe that's part of the beauty. But no, for me, it's definitely matches. Last but not least, this week we've got the Too Sweet podcast. What are your thoughts on Samoa Joe permanently replacing Jerry Lawler on Raw? Of course, talking about the commentary table position. I think it's something that needed to happen, and I think it's a long-term idea now as well, because Samoa Joe is injured, and I don't think he's going to be back for a little while yet. So yeah, I'm a fan of it. I think Samoa Joe has got a lot to offer on the stick. If he can't help by doing stuff on the microphone in the ring, then definitely the commentary table is a good place for him. I think he's actually got a future doing this long term as well. It gives him a position perhaps when he decides to stop with his in-ring wrestling. I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but certainly in the meantime, I'm happy to see him on the commentary table. Jerry Lawler, he's done some great stuff over the years, but the time is now, and as with the pandemic as well going on, I just don't see it worth the risk of having Jerry Lawler travelling to and from each and every week, and I do feel that you know, it's time to have a new voice on the commentary table. I'm all about the forward thinking and seeing what goes on with the future. And Samoa Joe for me is someone that is great at the table, and even at a short time, is shown that he can be a real standout. And yeah, I'm happy to see what Joe continues to bring to the table. I think that he could be there for as long as he wants, particularly when his career is finished. And yeah, I'm a fan of it. I'd like to say he's done great so far. He's great on the stick. So long for me, may it continue. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching here on Ask SCW, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Do make sure to follow everyone on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Support the wrestling community. We're one big happy family. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time here on SCW. And make sure to check out In The Week. Videos will be coming this week. Sorry there hasn't been any this last week, but there will be videos coming this week. And particularly look out for the NXT In Your House predictions, which I believe will be dropping on Thursday. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time here on YouTube. This has been SCW, the wrestling channel. Take care.